Master horse racing with daily racing forms Formulator, now free for DRF Bets members. Sign up to get the best bonus in racing with a $250 deposit match, plus a $10 free bet and free Formulator past performances. Go to drf.com/bet to play like a pro today.
Hey everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at the second jewel of racing's Triple Crown, the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes on Saturday at Pimlico, race 13 on the 14 race card there, going the mile and 3/16 distance for the 3-year-olds. Just 8 runners signed on in this Preakness, and Craig has been widely talked about. Just one of those 8 coming out of the Kentucky Derby, and that's Derby winner Mage.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing that nobody else showed up, but I don't think he's without any competition. I do think Mage is going to wind up being a heavy favorite, even more heavy than that 8-5 morning line would suggest.
And he probably deserves to be. He beat 19 comers in the Kentucky Derby, none of them coming back here. And like you said, there are some talented new shooters lining up against him, but I think most would agree that this overall is a softer race than the Kentucky Derby was. So we'll see if Mage can handle the 2-week turnaround coming back in the Preakness. We're going to talk about all of the contenders, but before we get to that, let's take a look at some features in TimeformUS to help us handicap this race, including the TimeformUS pace projector. And Craig, no flag predicting a fast pace or particularly slow pace. We're predicting a pretty even tempo up front, though there is some contention for the lead on the pace projector, particularly between the number 4 Coffee with Chris and the number 1 National Treasure. It's going to be interesting to see how the riders handle this situation.
It will for sure. I thought it was an interesting pace projector, and that none of the 3 shown on the front are need the lead types. They've all won from at least pressing positions in the past. They don't always go to the front. So I do think it's going to be a tactical race. I wrote an article for DRF where I was asked if there would one horse to be more forwardly placed, who would it be? And I think it's National Treasure, who's adding blinkers, drew the inside. And it seems like his only path is to really from the start.
And you will note the horse with the LP late pace flag is the number 5 Red Route 1. He's got the best finishing speed in the race. That's what that indicates. And he will be running on late if things do heat up on the front end. Let's also take a look at the TimeformUS finish projector, one of the new features in TimeformUS that you can check out in Timeform, both on DRF mobile PPs and also on DRF desktop now. And this is the TimeformUS algorithm showing a visual representation of the predicted finish of this race. Gaps between the runners at the wire being significant as to the confidence of the algorithm's picks. And Craig, no surprise here to see Mage shown as the projected winner, coming off that 124 speed figure in the Kentucky Derby. He's just way the horse to beat.
He is. His speed figure in the Derby was better than anyone else in this field has ran. That's why he's shown not only in front, but with a little bit of a margin there. National Treasure shown in second. He's run decent figures, and he's also done so pretty consistently in the mid to upper teens, whereas the outside horse First Mission is a horse who's lightly raced, and one of his 3 races wasn't all that fast, and that's factored in a little bit, though his top figures are right there with National Treasure.
Let's go through every runner in this field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1, National Treasure, and we'll take a look at his last race when he was competing for the Tim Yock Teen Barn in the Santa Anita Derby, trying to qualify for the Kentucky Derby in this spot. Things didn't quite work out. As you can see, they enter the stretch here. He's in 5th, ultimately going to rally for 4th place. There was a brief moment on the far turn where he got slightly shuffled back, but it was mostly because he just didn't have the speed at that point in the race to match strides with Skinner, who was moving outside of him. He finishes up decently at the end, earns another respectable 117 TimeformUS speed figure. And Craig, he certainly fits on the numbers. Switching back into the Bob Baffert stable, he just has to take a slight step forward.
Yeah, he would need a step forward. I do wonder about the addition of blinkers. It will help him go to the lead, but it's not like he hasn't had blinkers before. He's taken them on and off a couple times in his career. Hasn't really changed a whole lot. So I'm also a little skeptical of that Santa Anita Derby. Unfortunately, the 1st and 3rd finishers had to scratch from the Kentucky Derby. The 2nd finisher, Mandarin Hero, didn't run particularly well. So I think you got to be a little bit leery of that race at least.
Yeah, for my money, he's hit a bit of a plateau going all the way back to his 2-year-old season, but he is now second off the layoff, so we'll see if we can get a little better from National Treasure going back to the Bob Baffert stable. The number 2 is Chase the Chaos, and Craig, he is the outsider in this field. He's listed at 50-1 on the morning line, and his chances of winning the race might be even higher than that. He's just a horse that doesn't really have either the speed figures or the dirt form to compete at this level.
No, he doesn't. He had one dirt race that's not shown on our screen where he ran second in a maiden race, but that was an off the turf race, got a really low speed figure. When he tried to San Felipe, didn't work out too well. And even his synthetic form seems to have taken a dive. So it looks like he's in here because he got free entry for winning the El Camino Real, but it's kind of hard to take him serious as a win contender.
Up next is the morning line favorite and Kentucky Derby winner, Mage. And Craig, his Derby winning performance, it was really strong. Honestly, I mean, he did have his typical slow break and took advantage of a very hot pace. So breaking slowly, probably not as much of a detriment as it could have been in that situation. He also got a fantastic ride from Javier Castellano, who was able to save ground early and then tip out at exactly the right moment to come around some tiring runners on the far turn. But I think you still have to give this horse credit because we've seen such a history of these lightly raced horses not able to take that step forward in the Kentucky Derby. And he bucked that trend. He did so, showed that his strong performance in the Florida Derby 2-back was no fluke. And if he can maintain his current form, he's going to be a handful in this race.
He is. Even at 15-1, a lot of times we look at long shots win the Kentucky Derby and try to find something fluky about it. This horse kind of reminds me a little of Charismatic in that he took everyone by surprise, but I don't think it was a fluky race. He won it fair and square. He did come from well off the pace, but he's a horse who's had good tactical speed in most of his starts. He's certainly not a plotter. We saw his turn of foot in the Florida Derby where he came from last all the way to take the lead with an eye-catching move. So, yeah, he is clearly the horse to beat.
And I think you make a good point about him. He does have tactical speed. His past performances in the last 2 starts make him look like a deep closer because he's broken slowly in large fields. In this race, with fewer rivals signed on, a slow break might not be as detrimental, especially if he can run up into a more forward position after that. So we'll see how the trip works out for Mage. One thing that some people might be concerned about is the quick turnaround for this horse coming back in just 2 weeks. But what might allay some of those concerns is looking up the stats for trainer Gustavo Delgado in DRF Formulator. Craig, coming off 20-day or less layoffs with last out winners on dirt over the past 5 years, he's 8 for 23, 35% with a $2.39 ROI. And if you even remove that last out winner parameter, just generally 20 days or less on dirt over the past 5 years, in a 134 horse sample, he has a $2.22 ROI. So Gustavo Delgado does well with short rest.
Yeah, it's good to strike while the iron's hot. Maybe it's not the best thing long-term for the horse. I think that's up to the individual horse. But we've seen many Derby winners be able to turn around and win in the Preakness. The 2 weeks hasn't been much of an issue. And this trainer will certainly know how to get it done given those statistics.
The number 4 is Coffee with Chris, and he's one of the more experienced members of this field, making his 13th lifetime start in this Preakness. And this horse is really an overachiever. He's come a long way from where he started out his career, and he's earned some nice speed figures recently. Not sure this is the right race for him, Craig, because a mile and 3/16 might be a little beyond his scope, but he's not without talent, and he figures to be a pace presence.
Yeah, we had him shown on front in the pace projector, as we saw, and I won't be surprised if he's there. I do have the distance concerns that you do. I also have the concern that he really hasn't improved his speed figures much from very early or very late in his 2-year-old year throughout his 3-year-old year. He seems to have plateaued a bit, so he's not for me in here. But I do expect him to influence the pace.
Up next is the number 5, Red Route 1. Let's take a look at his last race when he was the winner of the Bathhouse Road Stakes at Oaklawn Park, 9 furlongs in late April. And that's Red Route 1, who's just entering the picture about here. He's going to make that typical late move to just get up on the wire. Craig, you know this horse will be finishing at the end, but he has been the recipient of some fast paces in a few of the races where he's been successful recently. Not sure he's going to get that same setup here.
No, it doesn't seem likely looking at the pace projector. I think he's going to run fine, but I do have similar concerns with him as well, where he really hasn't improved his speed figure despite some nice setups. He had a blinkers a couple starts back. Maybe that's what helped him win last time. But the one thing that really sticks in my head is he's going to be way at the back, which means he's going to be behind Mage. And I'm not sure how he could outkick that one to the wire.
The number 6 is Perform, and this is a horse that I've seen generate a little bit of buzz based on this last trip that we're going to take a look at here. That is him highlighted in the pink silks and pink cap on the inside all the way towards the back of the pack, and you're going to see through this stretch run, he has to alter course a couple of times as his rider Fergal Lynch was trying to find some path to run through, and he ultimately does get through on the inside at the end and wins this race. Craig, my problem with him is that this Federico Tessio just felt like a race that was coming together in general in the wire. I mean, you had 8 horses within 4 lengths of each other at the finish of this race. So I'm always a little concerned about the quality of races like that. And Perform, while he did have to alter course in the stretch, he saved all the ground and got that fast-paced scenario to close into. So I feel like that late close was a bit of an optical illusion.
Yeah, I agree. And the pace set up for him nicely. He saved all the ground. Sometimes those trips get overblown a little bit. He was able to win the race, and watching that stretch run, it's not like he ever really had to slow. He just swerved in and out while maintaining his momentum. What sticks out to me is the speed figure column that we're looking at. It's just nowhere near good enough to be a contender in this race.
Yeah, he did run well, too, back when a couple of horses out of that race have since improved. But even the Tessio number, it's hard to argue that should be any higher than what it was. And he's just going to have to take a big step forward. He does go out for a dangerous trainer in Shug McGahee and was supplemented to this race as not one of the original Triple Crown nominees. But Perform still needs to take a big step forward in here. The number 7 is Blazing Sevens. And we'll take a look at his past performances in TimeformUS. Another horse that has to get a little faster, although not quite as fast, much faster as Perform does. He is making his 3rd start of the form cycle here, Craig. And I think if you're going to take the positive outlook on Blazing Sevens, you're making the argument that he got some fitness out of that bluegrass last time when he didn't really finish as strongly as the connections might have liked to see. And maybe he'll have a step forward in him here because he did show some talent as a 2-year-old.
He did. I mean, he was a horse who was bet down in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to respectable odds. Ran okay that day. I don't know what happened in that Fountain of Youth. He just showed no run whatsoever coming in off the 4-month layoff. But I thought his last race was promising. It was a move forward back to his speed figures we saw as a 2-year-old. I don't know if he's good enough to win a race like this. I know Chad Brown has some history with horses not looking the greatest, winning the Preakness of late. But like I said, I expect a step forward from him, but I just don't think it'll be good enough to win.
Yeah, his prior Preakness winners were lightly raced, late developing types. I'm not sure Blazing Sevens really fits that mold. I don't have a problem with the form cycle argument. I just feel like he might be a little bit lacking in the ability department for a race like this. The number 8 is First Mission, the outside drawn runner in this field. Let's take a look at his last victory in the Lexington Stakes, which earned him some Derby qualifying points, though not nearly enough to get into the Kentucky Derby. So his connections made the plan from a long way out to wait for this Preakness. And they haven't caught the toughest Preakness field that's ever been drawn, Craig. So definitely the right decision to point to this race. This horse clearly has ability. You could see things got a little tight there in mid-stretch of the Lexington, but he's able to switch leads in the final 16th of a mile and put away that faux Arabian Lion. Definitely heading in the right direction, goes out for a strong stable. I just wonder if he's going to be much of a price in this race. That's my only knock.
Yeah, he's a second choice for a reason. Those running lines look good. 2 of the 3 speed figures look good. And I think he had some excuses in that middle race. He's going to get a good trip from that outside post. The pace projector, he's shown pretty close up 3rd. So I have no argument with the morning line. I think he's the second most likely winner in here. It's just a question of how much will he be bet. Maybe he'll drift up a little bit. Maybe he'll drift down. It's kind of a tough call for me.
Let's throw up our picks for this Preakness. And Craig, we're pretty much in agreement here. We've got the same exacta, just in a different order. I didn't have a clever take on this race. I'm not going to say that I want to bet Mage at whatever price he's going to be, 6-5, even money. We'll see how they ultimately do bet this race. But I just think he's the most likely winner. And I didn't see a great value opportunity among the bigger prices. So I kind of chalked out here.
Yeah, I can't blame you. I think Mage is the most likely winner. I put First Mission on top, hoping that he may drift off of that line a little bit. I've seen a lot of chatter about the Bob Baffert horse, and I'm wondering if he might take more money than he really deserves. And maybe First Mission will drift up. But don't get me wrong, if he's 2-1 and Mage is 4-5 or even money, it's probably just a race I'm going to watch.
Yeah, definitely interested to see how this second jewel of the Triple Crown plays out on Saturday. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and good luck with your wagers this weekend.